All right. So I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. My name's Bart Lorang, and I'm one of the founding members of Good Neighbors of Lyons. Today, we're going to talk about CMEX Lyons and the grandfathered status, a little bit of a status update as well. Really, this should take about an hour. We have budgeted. The content portion will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll reserve 30 minutes for Q&A and general discussion. All right. The way we're going to structure today is this is the following agenda. We're just going to do a quick brief, about Good Neighbors Lyons, who we are, and a primer for folks who don't know just about CMEX Lyons, a brief recap. I'll also go back into 2022 and then sort of where we've been as a community, as an organization, and then I'll level set and say, hey, here's where we are today. And then I'll talk about where we're headed and what our plans are for the future, and then how you can help with those plans. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll wrap up with Q&A and discussion. Okay. So as we get started, I'll just go ahead and say Good Neighbors Lyons is just a group of neighbors that wants what's best for Lyons, Boulder County, and the community at large. And we tend to try to be very pragmatic, we think, in our thinking, and try to be measured in our approach. And we live out in the eastern quarter of Lyons, and we'd love to see the area improve in general, and as well contribute to the overall welfare of our county, our state, our nation, and our globe. Okay? So that's who we are. So who is CMEX? For those that don't know, they're a Mexican multinational materials company. CMEX manufactures and distributes cement, ready-mix concrete, and aggregates in over 50 countries. They're a global 2000 corporation, and with about 13 billion in annual revenue, 27 billion in assets. So very large corporation with lots of resources. What does CMEX Lyons do, this local plant? Well, they really produce cement, the main basic ingredient of ready-mix concrete. Cement is produced largely from combining limestone, shale, silica from mines and quarries. So to combine the ingredients, the plant burns coal and heats a kiln to 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And this plant burns coal. Some cement plants burn natural gas, which is better for the environment. Some newer plants even use solar energy, but this plant unfortunately burns coal. So where is CMEX Lyons? For those that don't know, CMEX Lyons is on a plot about 1,000 acres south of Highway 66, about 1.5 miles east of Lyons. Across the highway, there's a conveyor plant, and that connects to the Dow Flats mine, which recently was closed as of September 30th. I'll talk about that in a bit. Reclamation activities for the Dow Flats mine are still continuing for the next few years before the space will be Boulder County open space land. So that's where CMEX is actually situated. And then what does the Colorado cement market look like? Just for perspective on this, I think it's important. There's 3 cement plants in Colorado, but there's actually 7 cement delivery terminals. So that's actually a lot of times the point where people pick up cement. Colorado produces 2.6 million tons of cement and consumes 2.1 million tons. And so it's a net exporter of about 500,000 tons of cement annually. Total employee count as of a few years ago was 327 people. Also very notable is that Wyoming cement production is very substantial. There's cement production near Laramie, and that's important because there's ample supply of cement down the I-25 corridor and in the Front Range. When did CMEX Lyons begin operations? Well, they began operations. The plant itself was constructed in 1969 by Martin Marietta, which is sometimes confusing because of Martin Marietta's other activities in the valley. But fundamentally, adjacent quarries were mined for decades until exhausted. And so to try to make sure that the plant was sustainable, back in 1997, the Dow Flats mine began mining north of the highway with a 25-year permit granted by Boulder County, and that ended September 30th of last year. And so the plant is what's called a grandfathered non-conforming use under the Boulder County Land Use Code since 1994, means its use and its construction and its structure predated the adoption of what we now have as the land use code. Okay. And so in terms of the CMEX lines impact on the carbon footprint and the climate change, unfortunately, CMEX is the #1 greenhouse gas emitter in all of Boulder County. It's equivalent to 30,000 people, which equates to about 7.3% of the entire county's emissions. This one plant has 357,000 tons of carbon annually. So that for as reference, the #2 is the CU power plant. That's about 55,000 tons. So over the next 10 years, that'll emit 10 million tons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, further contributing to climate change problems. And so, that's sort of a primer on CMEX Lyons, just a level set. Let's talk about where we've been in the recent history in the last year. So and I'll provide a quick timeline of events. So in May of 2022, Boulder County Parks and Open Space and CMEX got together and put forth a proposal to the community. And fundamentally, there's a lot of complications to this, but boil it down, it was about $16 million of free open space land given to Parks and Open Space in exchange for 15 more years of Dow Flats mining and guaranteed continuity of the plant. In addition, CMEX guaranteed, they said, look, we're going to operate for 15 years, or we could operate indefinitely in terms of timeline for closure of the plant. So that was the fundamental proposal. So from about June to August last year, we did a lot of analysis. We looked at this objectively from a proposal standpoint to say, is this good or bad? Fundamentally, what happened was the town of Lyons, the community, overwhelmingly recommended rejection and offered even a counter proposal that was very thoughtful. The reasons why the proposal was rejected were the environmental impacts, right, of obviously increased emissions in our community, continued mining, toxic substances, and so forth. The legal and financial ability to do so, that was suspect, because the legal permits at the county level, the state level, federal level, and so forth, as well as the financial viability of doing so was in question. And then fundamentally, strategically, it was a bad trade. And the deal dynamics simply didn't make sense. So negotiation was suspect. So in total, over 1,200 Boulder County residents opposed the deal, and I think a few dozen supported it. So in September of 2022, Boulder Planning Commission voted to reject the deal unanimously, 7-0. CMEX, at that same time, as they recognized the writing on the wall, began stockpiling heavily, pulling in materials from Dow Flats and building mounds of material to sort of take advantage of the last days of that mining operation across the highway. And then the Boulder County Commissioners voted to reject the deal 2-1. And then at the end of September, Dow Flats mining stopped. So in October of 2022, as we anticipated, CMEX began supplementing stockpiles that they had started to build by trucking in materials from remote locations. Okay. And then ultimately what we discovered was CMEX filed for alterations of operations in Wyoming. That's not really public information. Okay. So where we are today is as follows. Basically, CMEX has started creating new stockpiles, and these stockpiles are highly visible from the road. These are brand new shale stockpiles. Now CMEX is actually picking up materials at Arcosa, south of Boulder. So if you drive down Highway 93 and you look to the east, there's just across the Boulder County border, there's the Arcosa operation. There's actually a shale operation there, and they're pulling in trucks from Arcosa. They're trucking through the city of Boulder, so 28th Street and Highway 36, about 10 an hour typically we've counted. All right. And these trucks are dumping shale at the site. So you can see the big red trucks with the hiding for governor on the back. So they're dumping and adding to the stockpiles. In addition, all the efforts We still have dust events, fugitive CKD dust events. This is a view from Highway 66 in October, just driving westbound on the highway. This is a dust event the day before Thanksgiving, taken in the evening. You can see the dust spreading on down the valley, and depending on which way the wind blows, sometimes up in the Lyons. And, recently neighbors have been complaining about the truck traffic, recognizing that there's 50 to 85 trucks per day, dust, diesel fuel, fumes, emissions, that sort of thing, threat to public health and safety. A lot of people are complaining about this now, and sort of questioning, hey, did we make the right decision in terms of not taking the deal for 15 years more of operation and allowing these trucks to go in, increasing to our pollution and sort of the nuisance in the community. Okay. So that's where we are today. So that brings me to the next step, is where we're headed. Right. So here's the thing. These changes now provide Boulder County the legal ability and obligation to terminate CMEX's grandfathered use status in accordance with the land use code. Let me repeat that. These changes now provide Boulder County with the legal ability and obligation to terminate CMEX's grandfathered non-conforming use status in accordance with land use code and uphold the law. Let me walk you through it. So I'm not going to overwhelm you with legalese. I know we have some lawyers on the call as well, but if you want to, you can look at the land use code yourself, section 4/1003. This is fundamentally one of the clauses around non-conforming use termination, and I'll read it to you verbatim slowly so you can absorb it. The right to continue a non-conforming use terminates immediately when there is any other enlargement or alteration of the non-conforming use which has the effect or threatened effect of creating a hazard or nuisance on or off the property, or adversely affecting the character of the neighborhood, or of intensifying the use of the land or its need for services. So absorb that for a second. The folks who crafted the Boulder County Land Use Code were very, very smart people. When you craft these codes, you want to make sure that grandfather status doesn't last forever. And if there's alterations that fundamentally impact the neighborhood, the character of it, create public health and safety issues, you want to have ability to end that grandfathered use. This is a very broad clause that can be triggered by really any changes to the operation that threaten public health or safety, create a nuisance, or intensify the use of the land or its services. Okay, so what are examples of nuisances? That word is an interesting word, like nuisances. Let's just drill down on that word. Nuisances, excessive noise. A use that generates excessive noise, such as loud construction site, can be considered a nuisance. I know anybody who lives within a mile and a half of the plant can consider this a nuisance, right? And certainly the truck noise has been a nuisance. A lot of jake braking and things like that. Odors, visual impacts, health hazards, traffic congestions. I would argue in this case, we actually have all 5 nuisances. So let's walk through them one by one specifically, just to do some testing. So I mentioned the new stockpiling of materials, new mountainous stockpiles of shale, visible from Hygiene Road, Foothills Highway, and from neighbors. So is this an alteration in the land area occupied by the use? Yes, really, you're extending the land area that you're using for the use, right? You're occupying with giant mountains. Is this an effect or threatened effect of creation of a hazard or nuisance on or off the property? Yes, the visual aesthetics of large stockpiles visible from neighbors is certainly a nuisance, right? I don't think I could get away from building giant mountains on my property and have my neighbors be happy with it. Does it adversely affect the character of the neighborhood? Certainly. I've received voicemails, texts of people thinking it's actually new mining in large piles, and what the heck are they doing over there? Has it intensified the use of the land and its need for services? Yes, certainly. Stockpiles of land affect the wildlife and is a more intense use by definition. Well, let's talk about trucking. Trucking in 100% of the materials. It's been at least a doubling in large truck traffic on Highway 66 and Highway 36. New truck routes now through the city of Boulder, more than 10 an hour. Does this have an effect of a hazard nuisance on or off the property? Yes. Traffic, noise, pollution, safety hazard for cyclists and other drivers. Does it adversely affect the character of the neighborhood? Yes. Neighbors are complaining about the quote exponential increase in traffic, a lot of loud jake braking, which is illegal, diesel fumes, exhaust, etc. Does it intensify the use of the land or its need for services? Absolutely. An increase in trucks equals an increase in services. In fact, CDOT requires a new permit for over a 20% or more increase in traffic, and that's underway. Also, really fun fact, each 35-ton truck does the damage to the roads of 160,000 1.5-ton vehicles. I couldn't believe this. I had to quadruple check it. There's something called the fourth power rule, where the damage of the roads is 160,000 times of one car. So you absorb that and you realize 6 trucks in one day is equivalent to about 1 million cars in terms of the damage of the road, therefore the maintenance, the cost, our taxpayer dollars, ergo the use of the land and or its services. We've also changed a change of source materials in the CKD exposure threat, right? In 2021, a lot of scientific studies came out showing and demonstrating that cement kiln dust is absolutely toxic to communities and causes accelerated death, cancer, and other health hazards. Okay. Now, this is a toxic substance. It needs to be that is disposed of on site, but is often released in dust fugitive events in the community due to poor operating practices. CKD chemical composition is also proven to be highly variable dependent on the source of materials. So when the source and the input of materials changes, so when Dow Flats closed and they started choosing a different source of materials, the composition of the CKD changed. Therefore, it is a potential threat to public health and safety, right? And does that trigger one of the clauses? Absolutely. All right, so given all that, that's non-conforming use. Those are the reasons for termination. That's the evidence. What is the plan? All right, at the Boulder County level, we have filed a formal code violation complaint with Boulder County community permitting. Okay. There's a letter and a petition going February 1st to the commissioners simply demanding enforcement of its own land use code. That's it. So assuming the director of land use enforces its own code, the director of land use will send a notice that the non-conforming use has or may have terminated. That's simply what the requirement is. And at that time, the property owner, CMEX, has 30 days per the land use code for the following. A, provide evidence to the contrary, which we fully expect to be some sort of large argument, legal argument. B, appeal to the Boulder County commissioners. Or C, apply for a special use permit. So in the event of a denial of appeal and special use permit, that would result in a cessation of CMEX Lyons operations. Okay. And those cessation of operation would actually trigger the Division of Mining's reclamation plan, which includes demolition of the plant. Okay. So that's how this plays out. Now, I expect there's probably many twists and turns here and appeals and legal work, et cetera, and so forth. But, you know, it's very, very clear that the non-conforming use termination clause has been triggered and there has been a termination event. But we're not, but that's not all, not just the county level. As for CDOT, the state level, we have filed a complaint about the traffic increase. CDOT is now requiring CMEX to obtain a new access permit due to that greater than 20% increase. Therefore, they require a traffic engineering survey documenting those changes, and that will be made public. The expected time frame on that is about 45 days. And so, simply put, we want to make sure the alterations are clear, the traffic patterns are clear to the community. At the state level, with Division of Mining, we have filed a complaint on 3 vectors. 1, inadequacy of a 20-year-old reclamation bond. The bond amount is about $8.9 million. DRMS themselves have said it's really, really old and outdated and needs to be refreshed. 20-year-old dollars aren't relevant. So it's probably double or triple that amount. We believe that in 2001, the change to the reclamation plan, which included concrete burial of the plant on site, was done without proper public process and should have required an amendment at that time. DRMS themselves also said trucking and remote material had implications to the permit and changing the source material, but those changes to the permit have not been made via technical revision or amendment. Now, DRMS responded quite quickly, actually, and they actually sent a letter to CMEX giving them until March 13th to provide updated reclamation estimates and ultimately post an updated bond. And DRMS is reviewing and investigating the permit implications at this point in time. Our objective is simple. We want a public hearing, as we should have received 20 years ago. Now, as for Colorado Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, we have filed a complaint. The Title V operating permit expired in March of 2022. The required 5-year public comment process has not occurred. And under the Clean Air Act, these Title V operating sources are supposed to have a public review every 5 years, but CDPHE has not done that. And the renewal application that CMEX filed does not account for shale stockpiling or the current full scope of operations. Now, CDPHE responded and say they intend to review, given their increase in resources and headcount. The CDPHE has been decimated over the last decade in terms of resources, money, budget, et cetera. Our objective is simple. We want a public renewal hearing as the the Clean Air Act mandates. Simple as that. Public needs to have a say. Okay, so that's the plan. What can you do to help? Well, first, go to goodneighborslyons.com before February 1st and sign the petition. And then spread the word. Tell everybody, sign the petition. The more people we have, and we got hundreds so far, the more people we have, the more the commissioners feel empowered and courageous to take on a Global 2000 corporation. Sign up for email updates. Sign up to volunteer. Okay. Also, please, please, please donate to Save Our St. Vrain Valley for legal funds. CMEX will have ample legal resources, but we've shown and demonstrated in this community, we can actually beat large corporations with 1/1000th of the legal resources. So every dollar counts, okay? Also, attend future hearings, dates TBD. I'm sure there will be many hearings. But fundamentally, the Boulder County Commissioners have told themselves when we attend, it gives them strength because they feel like we have their back, right? They feel more courageous and emboldened to do things. They don't feel alone. So please attend future hearings. Also, procedurally, it's important to note Boulder County Commissioners can't make decisions based upon data outside the hearing. Testimony has to be presented in written form or verbal form for them to act upon it. So it's really important to show up and say what we feel and say what we think. Okay? So that's what you can do to help. Okay, so that's my show. I'm going to open it up to Q&A and comment. You can either raise your hand on Zoom or just shout out, and looks like we have one, Lynn Siegel.
It was wishful thinking, but could they be liable for full life cycle analysis of their product of cement, because all the growth in Boulder is just staggering. And it's huge wealth inequity and everything else, and all the cement that, we use. It's wishful thinking, I know, but
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly. Like,
full life cycle analysis is like, includes everything that it takes to make to have an outcome on a product, like the drills and the drill bits and the energy that you use to do that, and all everything that it takes to make something.
yeah, I'm not sure.
And so in this case, this cement is a very deleterious effect on society in a whole, because it's just building skyscrapers and that kind of thing. So all the ill effects of the extra traffic and the congestion. I loved your talk about 160,000. Could you say that again for everyone?
135-ton truck does the same damage to the road as
135
as 160,000 vehicles.
Right. That, like, those kind of statements are
Astonishing.
stunning. So think of all the cars that are used because of the use of that cement. I know it's wishful thinking, but
Sure.
I just wanted to bring it up, Bart.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions, comments, concerns? Christopher Allred. I saw your hand up, so.
Thank you, Bart. This was a very comprehensive and informative presentation. And I really appreciate the grassroots organizing that's occurring. And I'll be glad to help out where I can. I work at Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center and been following the issue, and we'd like to keep rallying the grassroots to be aware of this issue and ways to get involved.
All right, thank you very much, Chris.
Absolutely. And I was just wondering about the Arcosa mining site.
Yes.
I noticed that it's not too far from Rocky Flats, and I was wondering how the group has considered how that might affect if there are other contaminants entering that shale that goes into the making of the cement.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great point. I mean, that's the point. The inputs to CK cement kiln dust, the equally outputs, right? So we're now taking shale that's really close to Rocky Flats, which is very well documented, and who knows? So the point is, it's a potential threat to public health and safety. We don't know what we don't know.
It's just south of Boulder.
Understand.
Yeah, just south of Boulder, Rocky Flats.
It's called Aravco or something. What's the name of
Arcosa Lightweight.
Arcosa?
Yeah, if you drive down 93, it's on the way to Golden.
And it's east. And
it's east of the highway. You can't really miss it once
how
you leave
far is
Golden.
it? How
It's
far from the flats?
It's like a mile.
Whoa.
Well, I'd be glad to help if I can provide any documentation about the extent of contamination at Rocky Flats, just to provide more evidence for study.
Yeah, and because Rocky Flats, I'm not an expert in Rocky Flats, but from what I understand, they built a lot of houses there. They thought it was all clean, and it wasn't, right? And things like that happen. So the shale certainly could have materials in it that are not ideal.
Yeah, the fugitive dust events are what I'm concerned about.
Right.
And the aggregation of plutonium clouds, like atmospheric clouds that could have potentially contributed to the Marshall Fire, because it's a pyrophoric event. It's spontaneous combustion, plutonium. Right. So, yeah.
That's right. If it's a potential threat, it's got to be looked at under the land use code. That's the point of having these regulations. Unfortunately, so the way Boulder County works, also, I want to point out is they're 100% complaint driven. So they're not going to go look at things of their own volition. They have to be driven by citizen complaints, and that's how it operates. Tamara Krantz, hope I got the pronunciation right. You have your hand up.
You're
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for this great presentation and your and addressing, exactly what the codes say. I was just curious, what if you've spoken directly to any of the county commissioners, or if it's quasi judicial and you haven't been able to speak to them.
We have spoken to the county commissioners directly. I don't want to identify who, but maybe Sarah, you could give some background there.
Hi. Yeah, we have spoken with them, and they know what we're doing, and I think they're generally supportive. I mean, we have rules for good reason, and I think they want to see them enforced. The message I got loud and clear from them was that in terms of kind of the public show of force that we're trying to give them to show that support, more than anything, that will help this become a priority within the county. They have lots of different things that they're working on as commissioners. Obviously, this issue is very important to us, but in order for it to kind of move up the ranks in terms of priority within their office, the more public input we can provide via a petition, letters, general feedback, just so that they know the public really wants this, that will help them act faster.
So I'm sorry, just to follow up real quickly, is that on their agenda?
It is not on their agenda. We haven't formally presented it to them. We're going to present it with this petition with signatures. So it's not quasi-judicial at this point. So they are able to talk and hear people. I don't know how much they'll be able, they comment back, but it is not officially on the agenda yet because there's not a decision per se. So we will be asking them to act. So we'll kind of be creating an agenda item.
Can't you ask them to have a hearing?
That's essentially what we're doing. I think we're kind of kickstarting, essentially asking them to make a decision to have the land use director issue this letter of termination or notice of termination.
Hey, Tom Flint.
Let's see. Is this where I raise my hand?
Reaction, Jim. Hey there. I wanted to ask about getting some allies here. It occurs to me that there's a bunch of bicyclers who use this area pretty extensively. And so I was guessing that they have bike clubs. Could we enlist their help? Because the extra traffic, they're certainly going to be concerned about that, right? So I thought that was one avenue we might want to look at. And then the other question I had was about the rail line that goes out there. Right now, they're bringing in all the coal on the rail, right? Is there anything else on that rail line? If there's nothing else on that spur, then maybe we can get people who are into rails to trails involved. That would give us another ally, somebody who would be interested in getting that spur and then converting that into a rail trail, which would, again, we bring in a whole bunch of bike people. They have money, they have influence, there's lots of them.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, for sure. And I'm sure Sarah will be on that. Great
And
idea.
They could be breathing in this dust too, especially when it's.
Do we know about the rail line itself? Is there anything else on that spur?
Not sure.
Might be worth checking.
Good to find out.
Yeah. Okay, Gil, I click ask to unmute, so maybe unmute yourself. You have your hand. There you go.
Actually, it's Kay with a question.
Okay.
First,
Okay.
thanks so much for this. It really helps to be updated. I have not followed this very closely, obviously. Second of all, you've given CEMEX a lot of things to do in terms of answering all of these and counter answering. Third, my real question is, while this seems very tunneled and focused, is there any potential for CEMEX to do any other kind of legal challenges, outs? Is there any legal outs for CEMEX, or is this pretty much the road it's on and this is what they have to follow?
I mean, there's always a legal path. anybody who's been through litigation knows that when you engage in it, both parties have a hand on the steering wheel, and you don't know which way you're going to go. So you never know. But I think the path from an appeals perspective is pretty well sort of trodden in terms of how that will play out. In terms of enforcing land use code, we sort of saw it play out at Martin Marietta as well, in terms of the Board of Adjustments, District Court, Colorado Supreme Court, those sort of things. But ultimately, we'll see what course of action is taken. Sorry, I can't be more clear, but I can't really predict the future.
When's their next answer that they have to give Bart? Is that 20 of March? Or 20 of February? Because
Right now, there's a couple. It depends on it. So right now, there's sort of a deadline in March 13th with DRMS about a bond. DRMS typically provides extensions all the time. Is very industry friendly. So we'll see what happens to that deadline.
what's DRMS?
The mining reclamation. In terms of the CDOT, that's roughly a 45-day process that got kicked off in early January. As far as Boulder County, they are supposed to get back to us. They haven't yet about the code complaint. I think they're internally investigating it. But we are going to send our letter to the commissioners February 1st to make sure this has the attention it deserves.
So the 45 days is from January 1st or the early January? So
Sorry, did I?
45 is
The
mid.
45 days he's referring to is with the CDOT access permit. So we've gone down we've addressed several rules that are not being followed in several different divisions. And so there was one specifically with the Department of Transportation about CEMEX needs a new access permit because their increase of trucking exceeds 20% above their
Yeah,
baseline.
that was a good one.
So they're applying for that new permit, and that's roughly a 45-day process. And that was kickstarted in early January. So I guess by the end of February, we should have some answers there. The complaint with Boulder County land use was filed on January 20th. We haven't received any kind of deadlines or timelines there. There were 3 separate complaints filed with the Department of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. Those were all filed in mid-January. The only one of those that we have a deadline associated with is regarding the reclamation bond, which is out of date. And the deadline for that is what Bart mentioned, March 13th. Sorry?
If it's bonding, then will that raise their costs?
Yes.
They'll have to fund the bond. Yeah, right now the reclamation bond is about 8.9 million. However, that number hasn't been updated in about 20 years. And so it's supposed to be the current cost to reclaim that land at any given time. So yeah.
That could be a no going forward for them. Like they'd have to bankrupt them.
Well,
I think they can afford it. I mean, I think it'll be a painful check.
Oh, I heard the other day, they're a huge national or international company that owns them or something.
Yes, it's a multinational company. That said, there's
and in the context that I heard was, and I don't deal with this much, Bart and Sarah, I'm with CEMEX, but the context I heard was, oh, this would be nothing to them. This is one little tiny company in in Lyons. That's nothing compared to what they have. So why don't they just get rid of it? I mean, what he said, right? This would be nothing to them.
Well, at the end of the day, CEMEX obviously strategically has decided they want a presence in the Front Range market to that extent, right? And the Town of Lyons Board of Trustees testified and signed sworn affidavits to this effect that they said they're planning on building, an operation in Southern Wyoming, which makes a ton of sense. And that's why they've sort of filed for alterations or expansions to that mining operation in Southern Wyoming. So the point is not necessarily the asset. Obviously, constructing a cement plant is no small undertaking, but shifting, they want to maintain a presence in the market, and that's understandable, right? But it's sort of when that happens, how that happens, et cetera. As far as the capital requirements, look, you'd be surprised that the liquidity levels of CMEX aren't as healthy as they could or should be compared to their industry peers and competitors. And $400 million on cash at the last financial statement for a $13 billion company is actually not that much. Like, it's all relative. So, a few $1 million extra for a bond is actually like a painful check for a small operation.
So are you saying that the Wyoming operation would be from the ground up and that it would replace the Lyons operation?
Yeah, that's what's
And
been.
we have to aim at Wyoming.
Yeah, that's the speculation. I mean, it'd make a lot more economical sense given the proximity of the limestone in Wyoming, as well as, the renewable and environmentally friendly way you can construct a cement plant these days compared to 1960s.
Yeah. Where are they getting all this extra stuff that they use to make the cement?
Well, like the shale is south of Boulder, and then a lot of the limestone is from that Wyoming mine. And then I think bits and pieces, we don't have a full picture of the traffic patterns. However, we expect to see that in the engineering surveys that CDOT has asked CMEX to put forth.
Are you planning on fighting the Wyoming thing?
Well, we'll see. I mean, they've promised it's going to be an environmentally friendly plant. So recognizing, until society changes the demand side of what it wants to use for building materials, I'd
And
much
that's
rather.
my argument.
Yeah,
That
that's your argument. That might not be mine or
Right.
ours. I would much rather have greener, cleaner cement than dirty cement, right? If I have to make a choice at the end of the day.
yeah,
Yeah,
less labels.
I was just going to make one comment and then I have to jump off to pick up the kids. But I think one of the things, when we're talking about shifting production to other plants, one thing to think about is that the environmental impact of a cement plant, they're not all equal. So this is a 54-year-old coal-fired plant. And so even a plant that's roughly 20 years old would produce 50% less emissions. And then we have plants like the one in Florence, Colorado, that's installing carbon capturing technology where they would eliminate their carbon footprint almost entirely.
Wow.
So, whatever plant CEMEX may or may not build in Wyoming, or even if we shift to one of the other two Colorado plants, the carbon footprint of that cement is going to be drastically different than any cement produced from this old coal-fired plant. So it's not really apples to apples.
Thanks, Sarah. That is good information. That is mind-boggling that this plant is there still. This is a no-brainer to get rid of this.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Thanks. Your kids are worth it.
We think so. Richard, did you have anything?
No, I'd just like to thank you and Sarah. It's very informative, and I want to get something out in the email today to my friends and tell them to go to that petition and sign it.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you much, all. I appreciate your time this afternoon. There's another live webinar at 7 p.m. tonight, and we're going to record the one of the three today and then put them on our website as well as our presentation.
Bart, before you sign off, could you put up the slide that was just before CDOT, that round thing of CDOT? I was texting on the chat at that moment.
This one?
The one before that.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the flow in Boulder County, right? Go.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yep. And okay.
It's
All right.
excellent work you've done. It's just outstanding.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you for all your support.
And thank you for doing the boots on the ground.
Thanks. We just want the law to be upheld.
And then what's that Lyons neighbors? Could you put that one? Because I need to
Just goodneighborslyons.com.
Lyons.com. Okay.
Yep.
I'll do that right now. Thanks.
All right, thanks all.
Thanks. Bye.